On this episode of Delivering Marketing Joy, we talk with Aubrey Collins from Media Tree about parenting, business, and Sesame Street. Hey there, and welcome to another edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. I am your host, Kirby Hasseman, and I am super excited this week to have with me Aubrey Collins. Aubrey's the Director of Marketing for Media Tree, and Media Tree is a really cool company that's a little bit different within the promotional industry, and so I appreciate Aubrey taking a little time out of her busy schedule to join us. So thanks, Aubrey.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm very, very excited. I'm a big fan.
Cool. Thank you very much. So one of the things that, as I follow you online, I know you write a really great blog. And on a recent blog, I really liked it because you talked about tips that you gained from parenting on business. So I'm going to kind of cue you up here. What are some of those tips that you've gained?
All right. Awesome. Parenting really, it changed my life, obviously, in a billion ways. And there were ways that I kind of expected, the lack of sleep, and I expected a lot of laundry. Those were like my two areas that I kind of anticipated. Right. But I kind of couldn't wrap my head around really how vulnerable I would feel and how many things that I'd have to do that, having given the choice, I would have opted out of entirely. But when you're a parent, you don't have that choice. So I would say one of the biggest lessons that I learned that I've been able to relate to business is really that I'm stronger than I realize, both physically and mentally in it. And it goes really beyond even, having the actual child and all that entails. Yeah. But, just the decisions you have to make and the actions that you have to take. That you have no choice and you have to make these decisions, for yourself or another person. And I remember the moment that I first thought, like, maybe I can do this. It was like a few days after we'd had her, and we had to go to the hospital to have just like basically routine tests. But it's a few days after, and I was basically an emotional wreck, even more than I was when I was pregnant. And while I was pregnant, I cried because two men were fighting in the farmer's market, and I started to cry. So you could see that I was even worse than that. So I was really like, my poor husband, was just, I don't know how he dealt with me. So we're getting the test, and I'm, probably weeping to myself, and I randomly looked down, and there was this handwritten note that was jotted on something that was like the day's schedule or something, and it said, you were given this life because you are strong enough to have it, so love it, be happy. And it just happened to be there. I thought I was hallucinating, and I did what any person in a digital age would do. I broke probably all sorts of privacy laws, and I took a picture of it with my phone because I just needed record that had happened and that I was, strong enough to do this. So that was a big one for me, and I've carried it, into, my business life since then. And I feel like everyone kind of, when certain things come up that are maybe intimidating or perhaps like technically you have the ability to opt out of them or decline doing them, you really should force yourself to take the chance because, even if you feel like you have the choice, you don't because, your competitor could end up doing it. Mm-hmm. And, you have to be as brave as the competition and that you can handle it and that you're stronger than you sometimes give yourself credit for. So that was like a big takeaway, I would say. And then other ones, would just be to trust your instincts and, remember that you have instincts and believe in yourself, and that if something doesn't feel right, chances are it's not, and you have the ability to get ahead of it and address it. So that, and then just to be prepared because things will go wrong, and, you have to be, whether it's involving a child and forgetting the diaper bag at home and, having all sorts of horrible things that could happen to, everything that could go wrong in your day-to-day life and business. So those are the big ones that I took away being a parent.
Those are really good, Aubrey. The first one in particular, it reminds me, actually one of my favorite lines ever on this show was Paul Kiewit said that life begins just outside of your comfort zone. And
Right.
I think that there's such a lesson in that, obviously from parenting, but certainly from business, is that you do have to push yourself, and like you said, you are strong enough. So I love that. That's great.
Right. Right.
Speaking of your blog, I know you are putting out a blog, and obviously I'm reading it. But I would think a lot of people, gosh, I want a blog, but you know, I don't know how to come up with ideas. How do you do that?
Right. Really, by observing, I would say is the biggest one for me. Every day something happens that you can write about, usually more. So whether it's something that you experience in the office while working, if you had an idea that you had dealing with customers, dealing with coworkers, dealing with yourself, as a consumer, in your experiences, take note of your experiences, both good and bad. Marshall Atkinson, who was my promo kitchen mentor. I just finished the mentor program, which was awesome, by the way, and he was awesome. And he and I had a great deal of conversations about this, about mining your life for topics. Often if you sit, just do a short brainstorming session, you can come up with a large number of topics because, one idea will lead to another, will lead to another. Recently, I just recently started the blog, like officially started it. So I have a reserve of ideas that I've been tossing around for a while as I pondered them. So, my ideas may dry up at some point, but so far this has served me well. And one thing I'll add is that I've started carrying around a notebook again. In college and grad school, I did this, and those were, pre-smartphone days, and I'd fill them up pretty quickly. And I noticed kind of a significant drop in the amount of ideas that would come out of me once I started using a smartphone. In the past, when I'd be doing something, say I was like in, line at a store, I might observe something that would give me an idea, either a person or, a product or whatever. But now, when every minute of my free life was taken up by scrolling through news feeds, and I wasn't thinking on my own. I was reading what other people were thinking and sharing, and and I'm not saying technology is bad. I work for a digital company, so
Sure.
I love technology, but I encourage people to I realized once I realized that was happening, I started trying to take short breaks, carrying the notebook around again, because what I was doing was relying on my notepad on my phone and using that as to jot down notes, but just being able to take a break from it and to give your brain the opportunity to notice those little aha moments that maybe you would have if you weren't scrolling, or if you weren't scrolling through your phone, maybe you'd talk to someone next to you in line that would give you an idea. And now people, it's kind of weird if someone talks to you, you're like, oh, I'm what, so I think that was a big one.
No, that's a great point. I totally agree. I have found that here recently that I need to give myself time to hear my own thoughts. So I think that's a great point. I like the notebook idea. Now, I really love this. I saw recently that you put out on Common Skew, and I don't know if you put it out anyplace else, but that's where I saw it. You were inviting people to be accountability partners for you. I guess question 1A is, how has that worked? Have people responded?
Right. Yeah. It's actually worked out great. The reason I did it was, so I wanted to start this blog, and I've been a writer my entire life. That's what I studied in school. I did corporate communications. I've been a copywriter, so and I'd always thought I'll start a blog. It'll be really easy because I'm a writer. And then whenever I would attempt it, I would kind of balked when it came time to putting my own thoughts and opinions out there. I can write taglines and emails and product copy, website copy in my sleep. I literally dream about commas sometimes. So I think about words all the time. But when it came time to sharing my perspective, I guess I felt vulnerable, and I'd let other tasks jump in front of it in line. And, I would just I was doing it for myself. So, no one knew I was doing it. So it was easy to be like, oh, I'll just deal with it later. And that just kept, I just kept kind of putting it aside. And then I'd see all this, all these people sharing content, and yourself included, on Common Skew, and the dialogue that was sparked from it. And I knew I wanted to be a part of that. And so the accountability thing came in because Mark Graham had posted a blog of one of his friends, and she had been in a creative rut. And in her blog, she listed some things that she wanted to accomplish, and she asked her readers to hold her accountable. So that's what gave me the idea. So, I gave myself a public deadline, and I asked others to hold me accountable to it. And I offered them to join me and share their deadlines as well. And it really, it worked. Mark Graham joked that he was going to check in with me to make sure I achieved my goal. And he did check in, and I had achieved it. And so it worked. But then a funny thing happened. So I did it that week. And then the following week, I had a really bad week. My daughter got really sick. So much was going on. And, and I was just doing this for myself. It could be the one thing that I could push aside. And, I literally thought, like, well, no one's going to notice if I don't do it, because it's only the second one. And, it's not like I have, like, a readership, whatever. But then your friend and mine, the awesome Bill Petrie, did notice, and he called me out on it. And he called up and said to not busy myself out of my personal deadline. And I haven't missed a week since. So, it worked. And, I almost got in my own way again. But then, there were other people there to help me. And now, now it's a thing. And now I'm in a routine, and being consistent. And I remember the first time I ever spoke with you, I had emailed you after I read a blog of yours about consistent action. And so I'm trying to really put that into play. And even if, my daughter's up sick, once I finally get her back to sleep for the 5th time, I'm down there on the computer at 11 o'clock putting it out. So no matter what.
Yeah, Bill's a great guy. He's a great guy, and he's also a fantastic accountability partner. So that's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Aubrey. You've answered my 3 questions. I give everybody an opportunity to ask me one, so I'll let you come at me.
All right, excellent. So as I mentioned to you, that my only 2 YouTube subscriptions are Sesame Street and Delivering Marketing Joy. So you are top ranks.
I've often been mentioned with Big Bird, so that's great.
But your call to action at the end, really got to me, and so I'm a subscriber, and so witnessing you on social media, and as a subscriber, I'm struck by your quality, your output, and your consistency, as I mentioned before. So I have a 2-part question,
okay.
And so it's that when it comes to promoting yourself, do you ever struggle, or have you in the past struggled with that, and how do you overcome it? And then I feel like consistency is where a lot of people get stuck. I hear a lot of people talking about that they start a blog and then it fizzles out, or whatever project. So can you share a little bit about your consistent action and how you're able to pull it off so consistently?
Okay. Yeah, great question. Thank you very much. First thing, do I ever struggle with promoting myself? No, I have a giant ego. No, I'm kidding. No, actually, it's funny. I will tell you, I'm getting ready to give a speech, and the speech is a kind of commencement graduation thing, and to a certain extent, that's intimidating. I wrote that so quickly, it was unbelievable. But the principal of the school asked me to write my own bio. Can't do it. I literally cannot do it. I had other people help me write that, because sometimes it's just hard to talk about yourself. And so the way that I've kind of got that right in my head is that when I'm promoting the business through me, and I don't have a problem promoting my business, but I think in our particular instance, by building my brand, it's helping me drag along the brand of my company. And so that's how I'm sort of mentally justifying that, whether it's right or wrong or indifferent. As for consistency, 100% agree. I think that's probably the thing that, and the funny thing is, it's one of those things that's simple, not easy, but it really is simple, right? Our friend Bill puts out a blog on Mondays and Thursdays, and he does it every Monday, Thursday. Seth Godin puts one out every day, so people the audience becomes aware of it. When we first started doing Delivering Marketing Joy, that was my big concern, is because there is some production that goes into this. So we actually created a backlog of 5 shows before we released show 1. Because I'd read somewhere or heard somewhere that most web shows don't make it to episode 5. And I was like, screw that noise. I'm going to do that right from the beginning. And what that allowed us to do, I think, is to gain some momentum, get some feedback, and then by episode 6, 7, 8, A, we've had a little system, and B, we're like, oh, okay, well, this is the way we can tweak this. And it became a habit. But it became a habit before I put it out there. And I think that some people do that. They'll build up a little bit of a library, and I think that helps with consistency. And so for us, if you notice, Delivering Marketing Joy goes out every Wednesday, because so I've created that deadline. Once you create the deadline, and I love that Bill called you out on it, because now you know somebody's watching. And so if it goes out on that day, there's someone there who you're disappointing, so that helps push you to do it. So I think that's how we kind of make that happen. Not always easy,
right?
But I think consistency is the holy grail of content and social media for sure.
Right. Agreed. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Aubrey. I really, really appreciate you being a part of the show. We will have to do it again sometime.
Yeah, this would be awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right. That wraps up another edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. We'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for watching, but wait! Can you do me a favor? Please subscribe to my channel. If you haven't done it already, the way to do it's right over here. And hey, if you want to watch the last episode, check that out over here. Again, before you leave, subscribe!